Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Nimrod Pod. I am your embattled host, Lou Stump, alongside my brothers in arms, Chet Lifkit and Mel Goodman. We have an action-packed agenda for you today, so let's just dive right in. I want to start with Venezuela and the active coup against Pete Hegseth and President Trump because these two issues are interconnected. The deep state, specifically the Democrats, is in full panic mode over Venezuela. They're actively staging a coup against our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. However, this blew up in their faces last night after the congressional interviews were released, proving that Hegseth had no involvement in ordering a double tap on the narco drug buzz. This hysteria comes on the heels of the Seditious Sixes video, where several congressmen encourage the U.S. military and law enforcement to disobey the lawful orders of the president. So why are the Democrats trying so hard to take control of the War Department? To answer this question, we need to understand why Trump is targeting regime change in Venezuela. I'll start with a disclaimer. Trump has used drug trafficking as a cover for his true intentions behind pursuing regime change in Venezuela. First off, the fentanyl trade actually moved to Canada after Trump attacked the cartels for moving drugs through Mexico during his first administration. In fact, the cartels will kill anyone in their network that sells fentanyl to avoid any such conflict with the United States. Now that fentanyl connection has been debunked, Trump is using cocaine and heroin trafficking as his cover instead. The real motivation behind Trump's regime change plans is that Venezuela is the Democrats' piggy bank. They launder their money through Venezuela, just like they do in Ukraine, just like they do in Israel. Venezuela is uniquely positioned, however, because they are the wealthiest country per capita in the world. Their wealth stems from an endless supply of natural resources, including rare minerals, gold, and sweet crude oil. Now, thanks to incredible intelligence gathering from former intelligence official and whistleblower Patrick Byrne, Americans are getting a glimpse into what's really been going on in Venezuela for the past few decades. Former Venezuelan head of military intelligence, Hugo Carvajal Barrios, now imprisoned in the United States after pleading guilty to narco-terrorism charges from 2011, reached out to Patrick Byrne to let him know he's ready to roll over. In a letter to President Trump on December 2nd, Carvajal warns of the Maduro regime's deliberate criminal actions against America, including coordinated drug trafficking with FARC, ELN, Hezbollah, and Cuban support, the weaponization and export of gangs like Tren de Aragua to sow chaos on U.S. soil, and extensive espionage via Russian-tapped cables, Cuban spy networks infiltrating U.S. naval bases and politics, and paid off American diplomats and CIA officers. He further alleges that Smartmatic, or Dominion voting technology, developed under his oversight to entrench the regime and was exported to the United States, where it enables election rigging through maintained ties with officials and machine companies. Carvajal actually installed the head of IT at Smartmatic. Patrick Byrne brought this letter to General Flynn, who personally delivered it to President Trump. Byrne and Flynn have been actively working with Carvajal for the past 5 months, sharing more classified details to be briefed to the president to aid his decision to take action against Venezuela. Now, I'm not pro-war, but President Trump certainly has a right to defend the United States against these covert acts of war from the Venezuelan regime. Regardless of overwhelming cut and dry evidence of Venezuela's brazen attacks against the United States, the Democrats are going to use military escalation in Venezuela as a pretext to impeach Trump and impeach Pete Hegseth. With GOP approval ratings at an all-time low, this could be disastrous heading into the midterms. I do not want regime change in Venezuela. I do not want war in Venezuela. But I could be convinced otherwise. And if it's successful, I will certainly be happy. Maduro is not a good guy, and these are clear attacks against the American people. However, I fear the U.S. intelligence apparatus could be setting President Trump up for a Bay of Pigs 2.0 or even a Vietnam War 2.0. Nimrods, where are you at with this whole Venezuela situation?
Well, Lou, I didn't know about this letter. I guess I just got my nose too far in the dirt, that Venezuelan dirt. But now that I've heard this information, I think we have the appropriate means to go down there and fix things. However President Trump and the Department of War see fit. I don't want us to get involved in a useless war or we waste a whole bunch of money and lives. But I think if we take intelligent, data-driven actions, then we'll be able to make a difference at a low cost, a low relative cost to the American people. Especially since all this nonsense about the voting machines and potential election rigging in the United States has transpired. I think this is a new can of worms that had not yet been opened before this Carvajal and the letter. So I think this gives the Trump administration a lot more room to work, especially when it comes to taking action against the drug traffickers.
It's always hard to take a side whenever we have such limited information. Obviously, the ultimate decision makers, being Trump and Hegseth, know a lot more than what we know, and it'll hopefully be told to the public one day once all is said and done. However, I just hate these wars that we choose to get new people into leadership positions in different countries. A lot of times, at least in the past, it's been a huge waste of time. But with this letter, like you all said, it seems like maybe it is the right move to do. However, it's hard for me to choose a side, whether I think it's right or wrong, with the limited knowledge that we have. But ultimately, I hope that we can get to the bottom of it and hopefully get a much better regime in Venezuela. It's just at what cost?
Certainly. And I think we can all agree we don't want war. We don't want regime change. We've seen this fail time after time, but you could say it's a little bit different this time. Like most of the regime change wars for the past 30 plus years have been part of the war on terror, or they've been part of our entanglement in Europe and the war against Russia via NATO. But this is different. It's in our own hemisphere, and we do have a duty to secure our hemisphere. And now we're seeing the CCP moving in on the United States, right on our borders, using South and Central American countries as proxies. We should do something about it. Something. Can we get it done with diplomacy? It seems that someone more powerful than Venezuela is controlling Maduro. He offered to extradite himself. He offered to leave Venezuela and then changes his mind and said he's not leaving. And now we're getting all these videos from inside the Venezuelan regime showing that they're preparing for war. They're preparing to defend Maduro and his entire regime against the United States and our allies. It seems like now diplomacy isn't an option. So the real question is, how precise can we be? How surgical can we be? I mean, we saw what President Trump did in Iran. We saw what Israel did in their initial strikes on Iran. They were extremely surgical, and we were able to get in and out of a conflict in 12 hours. Now, obviously, the Israel-Palestine conflict is centuries old, and it likely will never end until there is a 2 or 3 state solution. But in the case of Venezuela, once Maduro falls, they have anarchy, and it will be very easy for someone else to be installed in his place. Now, who do we back as his successor? The CIA is really pushing the head of Venezuelan intelligence. Should we trust the CIA? I think not. We're actually seeing more and more leaks coming out of the White House that there is an active coup from a segment of the CIA against the president. And I don't think Trump has a strong enough hold on the federal bureaucracy to get this done without it backfiring. I could see major false flags or unnecessary escalations being pinned on Trump when it's said and done. Do you guys think that we have a right, or President Trump has a right, to take action in our hemisphere? Is this different than what we've seen for the past 30 years in Europe and in the Middle East?
Of course, it's different. The countries in the Middle East, they never directly had any business with us. They never threatened, or they never had any credible threats to us. And same thing with Russia within the context of the Ukraine war and the Israel-Palestine-Iran debacle. There are some credible threats coming out of Venezuela, one of them being the drug trafficking, two being all this new information about voting. I definitely see what you're saying. The people that are in the government now, there's still too many neocons. There's a ton of Democrats who would love to see Trump get a bunch of bad actions pinned on him. But to that, I raised the question, who cares what gets pinned on Trump? He can't be elected again anyway. I think we need to take the most efficient course of action to neutralize any real problem that this administration sees without dedicating ourselves to a years-long war or cleanup effort. Because one interesting take I saw today was that whenever you go into Venezuela and cause a bunch of trouble and overthrow their government and raise the poverty level and people get poor and hungry, where do you think those refugees are going to end up? And if there's one thing Chet doesn't like, it's those refugees ending up in our small towns in America. So that's what I'm worried about. You know, if we could go in there and handle it diplomatically, then do it. You know, send JD Vance down there, have him crack the whip a few times, and then call it done. If we got to do any military action, then do it and do it quickly, and then we don't even have to talk about it ever again. So Trump he has some form of impunity here because he doesn't need to worry about re-election.
Lou, to answer your question bluntly, I would say no. The only type of action I believe we should be making right now is action to protect ourselves. And that's why I like our vessels being in the sea. I like that we'll be ready if they want to start a war with us. However, you got to think, why would they? Maduro wanted to leave, and then now all of a sudden he is back in control. And like you said, it seems like there's another player here, probably a larger player, keeping him in the ball game. So why would Maduro want to start a war with the United States? It doesn't make all that much sense to me. They understand the firepower of the United States, unless there was a greater picture where they could pin this on the United States and have everybody turn against the United States. And with that being said, that's why I think we should just be fully defensive. And the only sort of action I would be okay taking right now, like you said, Chet, is regime change. However, at the same time, it's a 50-50 for me. I'm not sure if that would even help in the first place. The United States is all I care about at this point. Like you said, I don't want these refugees coming to the United States, and I don't want us getting ourselves in a war that looks bad on us. And the United States, from a military perspective right now, has a lot of hate worldwide, and we don't need to create any more hate within our own military.
Both great points. First, just to address Chet, you're totally right. Like, if we blow up this country and we completely topple their system of governance, it will be our problem to own. Just like Afghanistan and Iraq, it will be our problem to own. And these refugees will be our fucking problem to take in. Now, could Trump uphold his claims to not allow anyone else to come in from third world countries? He could. But where are they going to go? Nobody else wants them. Egypt doesn't want them. They did that before, and they closed their borders for good after that. I mean, hell, the National Guard shooter was an Afghan refugee that we allowed in because we completely toppled their government. And the same guys surrounding Trump that are pushing for this regime change war, like little Marco, are the same guys that celebrated the public murdering of Gaddafi, who was actually a good guy, an actual populist who wanted to make Africa prosperous. And now we have a Gaddafi 2.0 with Maduro, except for, and to address Mel's point, Maduro is clearly a puppet. When left to his own desires, he's actually has pretty conservative social policy, but relatively socialist economic policy. However, when it comes to these international conflicts and all the money laundering and all the voter fraud, this goes well above Maduro's pay grade. He is a puppet of Russia, Iran, China, Hezbollah, Cuba, every single one of our foreign adversaries in one way or another. If we look back to 1823, President James Monroe, he declared that the Western Hemisphere is completely off limits to new European colonization or intervention. The core principle of this doctrine was that any European attempt to extend its political system to any part of the Americas would be considered a threat to the United States' peace and safety, justifying any U.S. opposition. Now, Trump has repeatedly invoked the Monroe Doctrine by framing Nicolas Maduro's regime as an unacceptable foreign allied threat in America's own backyard. He thinks that the U.S. has both the right and the responsibility to remove it. And I think that's fair. I think that's right. I will never get behind a war. I'll never get behind a regime change. But at what point are the attacks too much? One of the core aspects of the people's mandate, getting Trump back into office, was demanding action against voter fraud. The 2020 election was completely rigged, and it was stolen by the deep state. And Trump now has a duty to not only reform the system, but provide answers and action against it. He's working on reforming the system. We haven't seen the paper ballot mandate yet. We haven't seen the mandatory in-person voting mandate yet. And hopefully that will be soon to follow. But right now, Trump has cut and dry evidence that our foreign adversaries were using Dominion voting systems to rig the election. And now he has a duty to do something about it. And if I know anything about Trump, he's not going to take it easy on the people that rigged the election. This has been the only talking point of the president since January 6th. It was rigged. It was rigged. It was stolen. Now he has an opportunity to get his revenge, and he's going to take it. I'll ask you guys, like, what is the benefit of us just sitting back and leaving Venezuela alone? Diplomacy isn't working. Like, what other options do we have?
I don't know, Lou. I'm not a geopolitics expert. I think sitting back is the wrong idea, but the diplomacy that we've tried, I'm not the expert on what we've done already, but I think we could try other things. You know, we could always embargo them. We could get into a Cold War. We could steal all their oil. We could just start stealing people from them. Or we could just keep blowing up the boats, parking our ships off their shore, and wait for them to do something. Wait for them to launch an active war on the American people. And then that would justify anything.
I think that's the problem they already have. Like, that they're already taking action against the American people. We're already trying to steal their people, overthrow their elected leaders. We're already there. Like, we already have black helicopters and spy planes all throughout Venezuelan airspace. We have the CIA's military division on the ground covertly running secret operations. We're there, and they're already taking action against us. So where can we move from this point? I don't know. Mel?
It just depends on what facet we're talking about here. If it's voter fraud, I think we need to create a certain way where we can keep it manageable within house, whether that's paper ballots, whether that's a different form of counting that can't be tampered with as easily. I just don't see how war will change the way that other people interact with the United States. If you hate the United States and you want to get a particular figure into leadership here, you're going to do it regardless of foreign action taken against you. If you have a goal, you're going to do your best to put it into fruition. And that's why I think we just need to work on our own soil to find out certain ways that we can keep these other foreign countries from tampering with us. When it comes to war itself and when it comes to a threat against the United States, of course, we have to take a certain action to protect our homeland. However, I just don't think going on the attack when some of these things could probably be managed within house is the right move at this point in time.
Good point. Like, instead of retaliation, let's just get full disclosure. Like, obviously, they've gathered an overwhelming amount of evidence that Venezuela is being controlled by Eastern adversaries, and they have been actively meddling in U.S. affairs in an extremely volatile manner. So why don't we just give full disclosure to the American people so that we know exactly what happened, and then let's cut off that fraud based on the intelligence and secure our own country from any further foreign intervention. I think that might be a solution, and I think that's the stance you take. I think the reason that the GOP's approval ratings are so low is because the lack of transparency. The people just want to know what the fuck's actually going on. We want to be briefed before the president. So if we give full disclosure and we secure our country, I think we can save ourselves from getting in yet another military conflict.
And something else I want to point out while we're here is this push for deportation. I mean, if we create these wars overseas, think of all the sleeper cells we have in here still. Think of all the plans that could still come into fruition from these people that want to do harm to the United States. We have to take the stance to protect ourselves and get things figured out here. And I think you're exactly right. I think that lack of transparency, first of all, if we have full transparency, it could look weak to some other nations. However, it's still essential if the end goal is to protect ourselves, protect our voting, protect ourselves from drugs getting in here. I just want to see a plan. And at this point, I just want this plan to be known to the United States and the people in the United States.
There's certainly an appetite from the American people to cut off the Democrats' piggy bank. Can we do that without military intervention? I think so. The problem is they're always going to have other avenues to launder their money. Look at the Middle East, look at Eastern Europe. They're already doing it, and there's no end in sight. If we cut off the drug trade, they can't wash their money anymore. If we ban Smartmatic from operating in the United States, we don't have to worry about that election fraud anymore. The only risk after that is making sure that China and Russia don't set up military bases and nuclear missiles in our hemisphere. And we don't see that action being taken yet. Bottom line, the Democrats are on their heels. We even learned that Michelle Obama used Biden's auto pen at least 6 times during the final days of the Biden administration. The evidence against the Democrats, the deep state, Comey, Clapper, Brennan, Clinton, Biden, Obama, is overwhelming. It's cut and dry. These people are going to prison. And that's why they are taking extensive measures to overthrow the Trump administration before it's too late. My message to the deep state, my message to the Democrat operatives is simple. Roll early and roll often. President Trump warned via Patrick Byrne that all those involved in the Venezuela money laundering weaponization against the United States have less than 24 hours to roll. Once Trump launches attacks on Venezuela, it will be too late. And you don't want to be one of the last people to roll. You want to be one of the first. They only cut deals with the people that roll first. So, Big Mike, why don't you spread those legs and give it up? Show us your piece. Let me see that thing hang between your legs like a fleshy chocolate metronome, slapping from thigh to thigh, playing the sweet sounds of Phil Collins. Do-do, 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 do-do. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Roll over, Big Mike. You're fucked. Fuck you, Big Mike. Fuck you. Get out of my country. I want to jump over to the Florida governor's race, specifically what's going on in the GOP primary. Obviously, a Democrat has no chance of winning Florida. So this primary is going to be extremely consequential for the future of the GOP in the America First movement. This Florida gubernatorial race is a microcosm for the broader GOP civil war. On one side, we have the Trump-backed candidate, Byron Donalds. And on the other, we have a populist dark horse that came out of nowhere, James Fishback, who is lobbying for the endorsement of current beloved governor Ron DeSantis. Could this be foreshadowing for a DeSantis versus Vance presidential primary in 2028? I think so. If we look at the political climate in the state of Florida, we have two types of conservatives. We have Trump supporters, MAGA supporters who love their governor. And on the other side, we have Ron DeSantis loyalists who would have voted for Ron over Trump in 2024 if they had the option, and ultimately would support DeSantis over a Trump-backed candidate in 2028. So now we have Trump's pick Byron against James Fishback and the current lieutenant governor of Florida, Jake Collins, in this three-way race. You could argue that it is just a two-way race, but an endorsement from DeSantis could muddy the water. DeSantis is fully against H1 Byron Donalds for a reason. DeSantis' wife, Casey DeSantis, was actually the first candidate to put their name in the hat in the governor's race. But Trump quickly came over top with an endorsement for Byron Donalds to run for governor, and Casey rescinded her gubernatorial bid. DeSantis is now looking for a formidable challenger for Donalds and is determined to make sure that he is not his successor. So now the question is, who is going to be that guy for the people of Florida and for Ron DeSantis' legacy? Who is James Fishback? James Fishback was a college dropout who decided to become an investor. He independently raised over $15 million as a college dropout and applied for a job with a large hedge fund, which he earned without a college degree due to his impressive financial gains, and quickly rose to the top of the totem pole. After several years of bending the knee to the man, Fishback resigned from his position and started his own hedge fund called Azoria, where he's raised over $150 million in capital and manages the portfolios of several ultra-wealthy conservatives and conservative organizations with the sole mission of supporting anti-DEI, pro-free speech organizations. Outside of his career in finance, Fishback started Incubate Debate, a nonprofit that has spread throughout the state of Florida and encouraged thousands and thousands of Florida students to get involved in debating. Most recently, Fishback sued the Federal Reserve for their refusal to cut interest rates. This garnered the attention of President Trump. Fishback also authored legislation in the Big Beautiful Bill aiming to give kids an early start on building wealth through stock market investments, with the federal government providing seed money to encourage long-term savings. This program is now called Trump accounts. At the ripe age of 30 years old, Fishback has proven to be an extremely successful investor, an entrepreneur, a leader of young people, a flawless debater, and an excellent speaker. The real question is, can he successfully carry on the legacy of Ron DeSantis and uplift the people of Florida, despite his lack of political experience? Nimrods, based on what you've seen about James Fishback, do you think he's the guy to succeed DeSantis?
Absolutely. 100%, Lou. First of all, I think Byron just doesn't know what he's doing. I've never seen anything good come from Byron. The only things I've seen are the Israeli lobby and the H1B visas. Two of the things that are absolute not acceptable to the younger generation right now, especially in a place like Florida. So he's never done the right thing. People call him a DEI hire. He's got a bunch of trash on his record, or at least public image. You know, it's been smeared multiple times by his own actions. And I really like the things Fishback says. My question is, you know, we all know the details about Fishback. He's a great guy. On paper, he says all the right things. He'll get on X, he'll post like a burner. But is he just saying it all? Is he just another JD Vance? Because that's what we say about JD Vance. That's what I'm about to say about Trump after we're done with Fishback. But is he just saying it all? You know, I see people in his comments say, you can't trust Byron. All politicians do is lie. They're never acting on behalf of the people. And they're under the post by a prospecting politician, James Fishback. So I want to know why I can trust him. I know, Lou, you probably have some insights. Maybe Mel does. I should do a little bit more research on my own, but I gotta There needs to be a differentiating factor between him and somebody that I can't trust in politics after being burned so many times by these right-wing figures, especially the ones that talk sweet and deliver sweet nothings to the fruitful young boys of this country.
Well, here's your answer. He's not a politician. Yeah, he doesn't have a terrible track record in politics for us to judge him on like all the other candidates, but maybe that's a good thing. He's saying all the right things, and he's running on policies that every single Floridian can get behind. He wants to stop the H1B scam. He wants to block Blackstone and these major private equity firms from buying residential homes. He wants to cancel AI data centers, and he wants to abolish property taxes. There's nothing stopping him from doing that. And if you're not willing to take his word for it, just look at who's attacking him. As soon as he announced his candidacy for governor, every single APAC-funded independent journalist and politician in the state of Florida, including Randy Fine, went after him. They had an entire slew of hit pieces ready to send against him. One of those hit pieces involved a lawsuit between him and his former employer. Well, who is his former employer? It's an ultra-wealthy, Soros-backed venture capital firm that hates Americans and hates populism. Who else has Soros attacked? Alex Jones, Donald J. Trump, Steven Crowder, Nicholas J. Fuentes, Mike Lindell. I'll take the words of Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes said that in 2028, he's looking for a dark horse figure to come out of nowhere and represent populist values. Well, Nick Fuentes, I think we found your guy. And his name is James Fishback. And he's going to give you the Fishback face fuck into another universe. Fishback's going to put Florida first. Fishback's going to carry on Ron DeSantis' legacy. And Fishback is going to dismantle the deep state in the state of Florida. Because if he doesn't, they will destroy him. They're already trying to cancel him. Before you know it, they're going to use these accusations as a pretext to try to throw him in jail. If that doesn't work, they'll try to kill him. So what options does Fishback have? He doesn't have any money against him. No big money, no money at all. All he has are his own funds, which are limited, and crowdfunding from the people of Florida. Before Fishback made his announcement, he teased that he would be making a special announcement at the Capitol in Florida. And his Polymarket odds for Florida governor went from 0% to 7%. And then after he made his announcement, it went from single digits to 17%. And then within 48 hours, he was at over 30%. Today, he's at over 60% and is projected to finish this race with a landslide victory. Imagine what this guy can do before next November. Sure, this guy doesn't have experience, and you could say you need to see some action before you can trust him. But I can tell you one thing. The guys he's running against are not Florida first. They are not the guy for the job. They are not going to carry on the legacy of Ron DeSantis. And in Fishback's case, I think he will be an even better governor than Ron DeSantis because he's not controlled by foreign lobbies, because he didn't attack President Trump before it went out of style, and because his sole focus is on the people. What policies excite you the most about this Fishback character?
I mean, I think all of his policies are great. You know, everybody knows I want to end H1B program. Everybody knows I want these giant corporations to stop buying single family homes and jacking the rent back to the young people that should be buying them and keeping the housing prices high when these boomers try and sell them off for 100% higher than they bought them for in 2021. And I love the fact that he's not afraid of the APAC and the Israeli lobby. The reasoning that Lou gave about the reason to trust him, I think that's good enough for me for now. Maybe a little bit more research on my part. I'll be in a better place to trust him fully. Let's see him win. This, like Lou said, this is a microcosm for the GOP civil war going on right now. The young versus the old, basically. So which side do I want to win? The young. The people that are fed up with foreign interference, the people that are fed up with mass immigration, job replacement, home price skyrocketing, impossibility of home ownership in the American dream. Let's see the good side of this fight win. Let's see him deliver some results, and then that'll be hard evidence. The fact that this America First position can win and can deliver results for the American people. Maybe we'll start picking up Democrats. Maybe we'll start picking up centrists. Maybe they'll finally believe. They'll see what their eyes want to see so bad, the truth. And that'll lead to us winning in 2028 and maybe 2032. So let's see some fishback action. I want to witness firsthand the fishback face fuck. I want to see him do it. If you're watching this, you got my vote.
The reasons I love James are because he's relentless and he's motivated. He's gone through all these trials, all these accusations against him, yet he continues to spin and to spin. I'm not sure if his plan this entire time was to be the governor of Florida. However, we see his track record. He worked at Greenlight. Then he went and created Azoria. And then he tried to get involved with the Fed a little bit because he wanted to have some government leadership. He was in Trump's ear. He started to let his desire to debate and to get into policy come into fruition. And now this has led him to want to enter into the gubernatorial race. I love him because he's relentless. All of these things, these accusations about him taking trade secrets and getting rid of them, profiting off of others, people defaming him, he's not letting this get the best of him. He's not backing down. He's continuing to be outspoken, and he's continuing to take a stance for Floridians. He wants to make it known that Byron Donalds has no clue what he's doing. He's just trying to take his Trump endorsement and hope that it wins him the race. However, Fishback runs on policy. He runs on making things affordable, housing affordability, and getting rid of all of these H1B visas. The only thing I want to see from Fishback, not now, but later during the debates, is how he plans to make housing affordable and how he plans to keep the economy running as it has under Governor DeSantis in 2028.
Yeah, and his plans are pretty simple. He's laid them out, and I look forward to seeing him flesh them out even more. He's going to abolish property tax. By abolishing property tax, he's making home ownership so much more affordable, especially for Gen Z, especially for the younger generation, who at this rate will not be able to buy a home until their late 30s. If you don't buy a home, you can't start a family, and there is no American dream for you. So I think this is extremely important. We have not even seen DeSantis himself abolish property taxes. So if Fishback can get in there and finally accomplish this for the people of Florida, he will already be greater than DeSantis ever was. I mean, if we're just going based off of ideas alone, you can say whatever you want about actions. We don't have any actions to back up his ideas with, but his ideas alone are superior to anyone in public office, to anyone running for public office. He's already better in my eyes than J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy, who really invigorated my interest and engagement in politics over the past few years, Byron Donalds, Donald Trump, Thomas Massie. He is saying everything that I want him to say. He's saying not only everything I want him to say, but everything that everyone else refuses to say. That's the difference. Sure, we don't have any experience to judge him on, but he's saying the things that no one else is willing to say. He's getting attacked for it. If we want to talk about these hit pieces against him, he actually sued Greenlight first as he resigned for religious discrimination because his Soros-backed boss was an ultra-wealthy Democrat that was pushing unlawful, discriminatory DEI practices across our enterprise and directing them at Fishback. His former employer is now seeking payment from Fishback for all of their legal fees. So for this reason, his father's Tesla got repoed, and he doesn't have a lot of money, but he's still fighting, just like Alex Jones is still fighting. Apparently, Alex Jones has $1.4 billion that he never knew about, that he will now be paying off until the day he dies. He can never make a dollar ever again. And these same law firms that are going after Alex Jones are going after Fishback. My one rule of thumb when I'm analyzing politicians and political pundits is who are their enemies? And two, where does the money trail lead? The money trail for his enemies leads right back to Soros and the deep state. Where does the money trail for the Fishback campaign lead to? It leads to his supporters, and his supporters only, the people of Florida. He has my support. I know he has your support too. And I'd like to extend a formal invitation to Mr. Fishback to come on the Nimrod pod and to state his case and to address all these questions that are being thrown around in the media and give him an opportunity to voice them. We will give a friendly interview, and all we want to do is learn more about the man. What are his plans for Florida? What actions is he going to take to execute these ideas, to execute these policies? And who is he as a man? He wants to bring Christianity back into the schools and back into the fabric of the state. And I think that is exactly what Florida needs.
And James, if you're listening, I'm not sure why Donald Trump is not endorsing you. You two come from very similar backgrounds. You're both business oriented. You're both very, very motivated people. You're relentless, and you don't come from political backgrounds. That makes you a normal person who's going to stand up for other normal people. You don't have any political ties. You're strong in what you believe in. And I would not be surprised if Trump changes his endorsement over to you once he learns more about you. So keep speaking to people, keep speaking your truth, and don't back down.
Amen, brother. The only thing that matters is populism. It goes beyond party lines. If there's anything that Fishback and the Nimrods can agree on, it's that the answer to 1984 is 1776. And the answer to 666 is Christ the King. We're taking our country back, and we're starting with Florida first. The Nimrods are signing out. We'll see you next week. Vote Fishback, motherfuckers. Fishback Facebook coming in hot.